Hello and welcome to misc. This is the show that details the stuff that I have been reading, watching, or experiencing over the last week. My name is Kyle. Thank you so much for watching. Today, I'm going to discuss two very specific things: a podcast that I've been listening to many years, and a TV show that apparently I'm the last person in the world to start watching. So first up, let's talk about that podcast. It's called Yeah Dude. A weird name, I admit, but one that instantly drew my attention. Now, I do believe very strongly that this is a podcast that you kind of need to listen to a few episodes before you really understand if it's going to be your bag or not. They rely very much on callbacks, on adding to the humor that they've discussed over the many years. It's hosted by two guys, which is every podcast in the world, but it's hosted by two guys, one named Seth Romatelli, the second by Jonathan Larroquette. Jonathan Larroquette is the son of John Larroquette that you may know from Night Court, and Seth Romatelli has been in numerous commercials and stuff like that over the years, but Yeah Dude is really their own creation where they talk about current events, stuff in the news, scientific research, but kind of then discuss it and throw their own spin on things. And I think that is what I'm the most attracted to, where Jonathan does have his own eccentricities and his own thoughts and opinions. But I don't think the show would work as well without Seth being there. And Seth is this very unique, I want to say character, but I do believe it's his actual real person. That was an awkward way to phrase that. What I mean by that is that this is a guy who, I don't even know if he has an email address, but definitely does not own a smartphone, reads the newspaper every day, is a vegetarian, has all these different aspects of his life where he's very much cut off from most of the plugged in world, and yet he runs a podcast or helps to run a podcast. Their banter back and forth is what makes this show, where you have two people that will sometimes absolutely 100% agree on topics, and occasionally might have a bit of a different take on what's going on. Summing it up, I think what draws me coming back and back for years and years and years is that I absolutely know that whatever news story that they bring up or whatever research that they're going to bring up, they're going to bring it from a perspective that is just not stated in the wide world of news or in the wide world of information gathering. Specifically, I think when Seth here many weeks ago said, you know what, at the end of the day, why don't we just bite out of each other's business? Why does everyone have to have their nose in each other's business? And I agree with that. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of wish that that Seth could go around, and Jonathan for that matter, could just go around and slap people against the heads and be like, could you just stop being dumb? Just focus on yourself and don't worry about all these other people. So, I mean, I know you want to have another podcast in your life where two white guys talk about the news. So, you should go listen to Yeah Dude. Next up is Rick and Morty. This is the TV show where I mentioned at the beginning, I'm sure most people at least have a passing knowledge of whether or not you've actually watched it or not. I only really started hearing about this show probably a couple months ago, and people kept telling me, and my podcast partner on whatever this is kept telling me, you need to watch this show. You need to watch this show. So I eventually watched the show. And I watched the entire series, all 2 and 2/3 seasons, in, 3 days? I really powered through the entire thing. Not that there's that many episodes, and they're only about 20 minutes each, but still, I powered through this show very quickly. And as an outsider, from someone who has not started watching at the very beginning, my thoughts on it went very much like this, where I started watching it, and the first 2 to 3 episodes, I'm like, okay, it's kind of funny, I understand what's going on. The big premise here is that this is a show that was created by Dan Harmon of Community fame and Justin Roiland, who's done a lot of voice acting from what I can understand by looking at his IMDb. And they created a show that is essentially a send-up of Doc Brown and Marty McFly, but in cartoon form, and then everything elevated up to 11. That's essentially what it is. It's like this drunk grandfather figure who is taking his grandson on all these wacky, crazy adventures, and just deplorable things then happen from there. So that's the concept of the show, and I was like, okay, like I get it. It's kind of like a one joke thing, I feel. And I wasn't really getting it. I wasn't understanding why everyone seemed to be like over the moon in love with this show. And then some things started to happen where they really started to lean in on the science fiction aspect of this TV show, where they really started to develop intriguing and interesting and unique takes on the entire science fiction premises that we've all seen like a million different times. So one in particular, very, very early on, we see them go to an alternate reality. We've seen that before, but they realize that they're just never going to be able to change it. They're never going to be able to uh, go back to the way it was. So essentially they go to another alternate reality where they kill themselves, like their other characters, and just start living in that reality. And that has had far-reaching implications on the rest of the series, which I find really remarkable and fascinating. There's callbacks to previous episodes, which I'm a big fan of having of linear storytelling, not just episodic storytelling. What my favorite thing is, I think, well, there's two things I really love. Number one, we have the emotional aspect that the show started to reach into, where we really see that Rick, the grandfather figure, really cares a lot for his grandson, but he has just a hard time verbalizing that, and he has to hide behind basically his alcoholism, and he has to hide behind his shame and his pain, and being just really, really mean to everyone else. And I think we see that Morty is just really struggling to find out himself and trying to figure out who he really is. And I think that those two dynamics are just really interesting in an animated show that's ostensibly just about crazy adventures happening. And the second thing that I really enjoy is the fact that we are following people that are really, really smart. This is not like a horror film where you're like, why are you doing what you're about to do? That makes no sense. We have multiple episodes where Rick essentially figures out what's going on within the first 30 seconds. And that would have normally been an entire episode of television, is the characters not understanding what's going on, figuring out, and then, achieving their goal. And in here, they just do away with that. It's like, oh, you're the devil, or like a weird spirit creature, and this is what you're going to do to the town, so I'm just going to go and fight you from that point. And so now we're going way quicker into the plot, and they can decide to do different things that we normally don't get to see. So, what this means, if I could speak, what this means is that I'm just a huge fan of the show, and I think it is definitely something that you can rewatch over and over again and get more and more value out of. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. I think that both Uhh Yeah Dude and Rick and Morty are two really great examples of kind of subverting your expectations a little bit, where you get lulled into, I think I know what this is going to be, and then it has the rug pulled out from under you. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are. And let me know what you've been watching or consuming or reading over the last week, and we can have that discussion down in the comments. Until next week, I'll see you then.